What if I told you the worst night of my life became the beginning of something impossible to explain? The snow fell like shards of broken glass, each flake cutting through the thin fabric of my cloak with cruel precision. I stumbled forward through drifts that reached my knees, white hair the exact color of the snow around me, plastered to my pale face by the relentless wind. Frost gathered on eyelashes that matched the color of fresh snow, obscuring my vision until I had to stop and clear them with trembling fingers. My breath came in ragged gasps that burned my lungs with cold so intense it felt like punishment from the ancient gods themselves, punishment for what I was, punishment for refusing to bend my neck and lower my eyes like a proper Omega should. 3 hours ago, Alpha Marcus had severed our bond in front of the entire Eastern Pack. His words still echoed in my mind like poison slowly spreading through my thoughts. I cannot have a mate who defies me at every turn, Elena. Your obstinacy is not strength. It is weakness disguised as pride. You embarrass me. You undermine my authority. You make me look weak before my people. The bond breaking felt like someone had reached into my chest and torn out half my soul with their bare hands. The physical pain was overwhelming, a searing agony that started at the base of my neck where his mark had been and spread through every nerve ending like liquid fire. I had collapsed immediately, screaming, clawing at the place where his teeth had once claimed me. But worse than the pain was the emptiness that followed. The hollow, echoing space where his presence used to hum in the back of my consciousness like a second heartbeat. 3 years. 3 years of trying to be what he needed, of biting my tongue when I disagreed with his decisions, of lowering my eyes when everything in me wanted to meet his gaze and challenge his assumptions, of playing the perfect, submissive Omega who never questioned, never argued, never showed the defiance that burned in my core like an eternal flame. And it still had not been enough. I had refused to lower my eyes when he commanded it during a pack meeting, refused to accept his word as law without question when I knew he was wrong about the hunting routes, refused to apologize to his beta for daring to suggest a better strategy that would have saved lives. And now I was paying the price with every agonizing step through this frozen wasteland. The blizzard intensified around me, visibility dropping to mere meters. I could barely see my own hands extended before my face. I should turn back, find shelter, beg for mercy from a pack that had already cast me out. But where would I go? The pack house was no longer my home. Marcus had made that abundantly clear when he ordered me to leave immediately, to take nothing but the clothes on my back, to never return. My family had disowned me years ago when my albinism manifested at age 12. One day I'd been a normal child with brown hair and tanned skin. The next morning, I woke to find every strand of hair turned pure white, my skin bleached pale as milk, my eyes transformed to the color of winter ice. The healers called it a rare genetic mutation. Everyone else called it divine punishment. They said my parents must have offended the ancient gods, that I was marked for misfortune, cursed. Perhaps they were right. Perhaps I was cursed. Why else would I be the Omega who could not submit, the mate who could not keep her Alpha satisfied, the aberration who looked wrong, acted wrong, existed wrong in every fundamental way? A sound cut through the howling wind, weak, pained, definitely not human. I stopped, straining to hear it again through the storm's relentless roar. There, to my left, barely audible beneath the wind's shriek, a whimper, low and desperate. Every survival instinct I possessed screamed at me to keep walking. I was already past the point of no return, my body temperature dropping dangerously low. Stopping to investigate meant certain loss of life. But that sound, that desperate, pain-filled sound. I found him half buried in a snowdrift beside a fallen tree, silver-gray fur matted with dark stains that could only be his life force. A wolf. Massive even in his weakened state, easily twice the size of any wolf I had ever encountered. His body stretched nearly 3 meters from nose to tail. One of his hind legs bent at an unnatural angle, bone clearly broken. Deep gashes scored his flank, the crimson life force seeping steadily into the pristine snow around him, creating expanding circles of red against white. His eyes opened as I approached, and my breath caught in my throat. Gold. pure, molten gold, burning with an intelligence that should not exist in any animal. Those eyes tracked my movement with unmistakable awareness, watching as I dropped to my knees beside him despite the cold seeping through my dress and into my bones. "Easy," I whispered, extending one trembling hand slowly. "I am not going to hurt you. I promise." He should have snarled, should have snapped at my fingers with teeth designed to tear flesh from bone. Wild wolves did not tolerate this kind of proximity from strangers, but he simply watched me with those impossibly intelligent eyes, his massive chest rising and falling in labored breaths that rattled with concerning wetness. I assessed his injuries with growing horror. Severe, life-threatening. He should already be gone. The amount of life force he had lost painted the snow red for meters around him. The broken leg alone would be fatal in this weather. Add the deep gashes, the obvious signs of a brutal fight, and the freezing temperature. He was dying, slowly, painfully, alone in the snow, just like I would be if I stayed here much longer. "We are quite the pair," I said softly, more to myself than to him. "Both of us rejected, both of us dying, both of us alone." Those golden eyes blinked slowly, almost understanding. The old hunting cabin. I remembered passing it perhaps 2 kilometers back before the storm became truly murderous. If I could get him there, if I could somehow move this massive creature. "This is going to hurt," I warned, sliding my arms beneath his body. "I am so sorry, but we will both freeze if we stay here." He was enormous, his weight easily exceeding mine by 30 or 40 kilograms. My muscles screamed in protest as I lifted, my legs shaking with the effort and the cold. But somehow, I found the strength to stand, to take one step, then another. The trek back took an eternity. Each step was agony, my legs threatening to buckle, the wolf's weight pressing me deeper into the snow with every footfall. My breath came in gasps, my vision blurred. Twice I fell, both times certain I would not rise again. But each time, those golden eyes met mine through my tears, and I found myself standing, moving, refusing to quit. By the way, if this story has already grabbed you, do not forget to subscribe and hit the notification bell so you will not miss what happens next. Now, back to that moment. The cabin appeared through the white curtain like salvation manifested in wood and stone. I kicked the door open with the last of my strength, stumbled inside, and carefully, so carefully, lowered the wolf onto the pile of old furs near the cold fireplace. My arms shook violently as I released him, muscles pushed far beyond their limits. For several long moments I could only kneel there, gasping for breath, my entire body trembling. Then, training took over, the basic healing knowledge every pack member learned, even those cursed and rejected. Fire first. Warmth or nothing else would matter. My hands shook so badly I could barely hold the flint, but eventually I coaxed flames from the kindling. The fire caught and spread, blessed heat slowly filling the small space. Only then did I allow myself to examine his injuries properly. Worse than I thought. Much worse. The gashes went deep, exposing muscle and possibly bone. The broken leg was a compound fracture. I could see white bone fragments pressing against torn skin, and the amount of life force he had lost. He should be gone. Should have succumbed minutes ago. "Why are you still fighting?" I asked him as I gathered snow to melt for washing his wounds. "Why not just let go? It would be easier. Painless. Better than this slow suffering." His ear twitched. Those golden eyes never left my face. I tore strips from my underskirt, using the fabric to create bandages. Melted snow became wash water, though it stung my frozen fingers to handle it. I cleaned each wound methodically, working by firelight, talking softly to keep him calm. "I should be saving myself," I murmured as I bound his largest gash, using this energy to find shelter, to survive another day. But here I am, wasting my last strength on a dying wolf who will probably not survive until morning anyway. But even as I spoke the words, my hands continued their work, wrapping, cleaning, using pieces of firewood to splint his broken leg as straight as possible, working with a focus and gentleness that surprised me. Hours passed in that hazy, exhausted state. The storm raged outside, the fire crackled, and slowly, Impossibly, the wolf's breathing steadied. The awful rattle in his chest eased. His eyes remained alert, tracking my every movement. Finally, when I had done everything possible with my limited supplies and fading strength, I collapsed beside him. My body simply gave out, muscles turning to water. I slumped against the rough wooden wall, too exhausted even to remove my wet cloak. The wolf shifted slightly, a low rumble emanating from his chest. Not threatening, almost appreciative. He slowly lifted his massive head from the furs. His golden eyes looked directly at me, not past me, not through me, but at me with such piercing clarity, such obvious consciousness, that my breath caught in my throat despite my exhaustion. He was not just a dying beast waiting for the end. He understood. Every word I had spoken, every action I had taken, every tear I had shed. He understood everything. The fire burned low, casting dancing shadows across the cabin's rough walls. I should sleep. My body screamed for rest. Every muscle ached with deep fatigue. My fingers had finally stopped their violent trembling, and my eyelids felt weighted with stones. But sleep would not come. Instead, I sat beside the massive silver-gray wolf, my back against the cold wooden wall, and finally, allowed myself to completely break apart. You know what the worst part is? My voice cracked on the words, barely rising above a whisper. The wolf's ear twitched immediately, and those extraordinary golden eyes tracked my face with unnerving intensity. It is not even the rejection itself, not the pain of the bond breaking, though that felt like dying. No. The worst part is knowing Marcus was absolutely right about me. I pulled my knees to my chest, wrapping my arms around them in a futile attempt at self-comfort. My white hair fell forward like a curtain, hiding my face from those too intelligent eyes. I cannot submit. I have tried. I swear on every ancient god I have tried so hard, but every single time an alpha commands me to lower my eyes, to accept their words without question, to make myself smaller and quieter and less than I am, something inside me rebels, something fundamental refuses to bend. The wolf made a soft sound deep in his throat, almost like a question. I laughed, but it came out bitter and broken. They say omegas are meant to be gentle, yielding like water, that our very nature is to nurture and submit, to support our alphas without challenging them. Our biology supposedly drives us toward obedience. I traced meaningless patterns in the dust covering the floor. But what if you are an omega whose every instinct tells you to question, to challenge, to stand your ground when you absolutely know, that your alpha is wrong? My fingers found the place on my neck where Marcus's mark had been. The skin felt raw there, sensitive, like a wound that refused to heal. He said I embarrassed him, that an alpha cannot lead effectively with a mate who undermines his authority in front of the pack, that every time I questioned his decisions or offered alternatives, I made him look weak and indecisive. I swallowed hard against the lump forming in my throat. Maybe he was right. Maybe I am broken somehow. Maybe the same curse that turned my hair white and my skin pale also damaged whatever internal compass is supposed to make omegas naturally submissive. My hand moved unconsciously to touch the white strands of my hair, running them through my fingers. They felt like silk, beautiful in texture if not in meaning. Or maybe I was cursed from the very beginning, from birth. Everyone certainly said so. When I emerged from my mother at age 0 with normal brown hair, they celebrated. But 12 years later, when I woke one morning transformed into this wrongness, they called it divine punishment. The memories flooded back with painful clarity. Children throwing stones and calling me ghost, demon, ill omen sent to curse their families. Adults crossing to the opposite side of streets rather than pass too close to my contaminating presence. Mothers pulling their cubs away when I approached, as if my condition might spread through proximity. Even my own parents, my own blood, had looked at me with something between fear and bitter disappointment after the change. The healers examined me for weeks, I continued, my voice dropping even quieter. They called it albinism, a rare genetic anomaly that affects 1 in 20,000 individuals. They said it was simply biology, a lack of melanin production in my skin, hair, and eyes. Nothing supernatural, nothing cursed. I met the wolf's gaze directly. But everyone else in the pack knew better. They said my parents must have committed some terrible offense against the ancient gods, that I was marked for misfortune as punishment for sins I did not even commit, that my very existence proved our family line was tainted. The wolf shifted slightly closer, the movement careful despite his injuries. His presence felt comforting somehow, grounding. I learned very early to be strong, I said, to fight back when children threw stones, to hold my head high when adults whispered, to refuse to shrink myself just because my existence made others uncomfortable. That defiance became armor, protection against a world that saw me as wrong. My voice broke completely. But that armor, it cost me everything. Marcus was the first person in years who seemed to see past my appearance, who called my white hair unique, striking, even beautiful, who looked at my pale skin and ice-colored eyes without flinching away. When he claimed me as his mate 3 years ago, I truly thought finally someone accepted me exactly as I am. Tears I had been holding back finally fell, tracking hot lines down my cold cheeks. But he did not want me. Not really. He wanted the idea of me, an exotic, unusual mate to display at gatherings, something different to make him stand out among other alphas. As long as I stayed decoratively quiet, properly obedient, as long as I let him make every decision without input and never showed the defiant nature underneath the unusual exterior. I gestured helplessly at nothing, at everything. The moment I showed my true self, the Omega who questions and challenges and refuses to accept authority without reason, he could not discard me fast enough. The wolf rumbled again, deeper this time. The sound reverberated through his massive chest, and somehow it felt almost sympathetic, understanding. 3 years, I whispered. 3 years of trying to be what he needed, biting my tongue until it bled when I disagreed with his decisions, forcing my eyes down when everything in me screamed to meet his gaze and argue my point, smiling and nodding and playing the perfect submissive Omega who never caused problems. I wiped my eyes roughly with the back of my hand. Tonight he ordered me to apologize to his beta, in front of everyone at the pack gathering, for daring to merely suggest, a better hunting route through the northern woods. I'd tracked those woods for years. I knew every game trail, every den, every place prey gathered. I knew I was right. My voice gained strength, anger bleeding through the pain. But he demanded I kneel before his beta and the entire pack, demanded I admit I had overstepped my place, that I had spoken out of turn, that I should have trusted his superior judgment instead of relying on my own observations. The fire popped loudly, sending sparks spiraling up toward the chimney. Outside, the blizzard continued its relentless assault on the cabin walls. I could not do it, I said flatly, could not force myself to kneel and speak that lie, could not apologize for being right just to preserve his ego. So I refused. I looked him directly in the eyes and said no. My hand moved again to my neck, touching that raw place. He severed the bond right there, right in front of everyone, announced that I was no longer his mate, no longer welcome in his pack, no longer anything to him, just like that. 3 years of trying, of struggling to be enough, and he threw me away like garbage. The wolf made another sound, this one distinctly angry, a low growl that held surprising depth despite his weakened state. I should hate him, I continued quietly. Everyone says I should rage and curse his name, but mostly I just feel empty, lost in every possible way. Because if I cannot be the mate an alpha needs, cannot perform the basic functions my designation demands, then what am I? What purpose does an Omega serve who cannot submit? What value does a wolf have who looks wrong, acts wrong, exists wrong in every fundamental way society recognizes? I looked at the massive creature beside me. His silver-gray fur was clean now, the worst of the life force washed away to reveal the beautiful coloring underneath. His breathing remained steady despite injuries that should have ended him, and those gold eyes, they watched me with such intensity, such focus, that I felt seen in a way I had not experienced in years. "You are the first living thing in so long who has not flinched away from me," I said, reaching out slowly to touch his fur. He remained perfectly still, allowing the contact. Who has not looked at my white hair and pale skin with fear or disgust, who has not judged me for existing differently. My fingers sank into his thick coat, and warmth spread from the contact, not just physical heat, but something deeper, more fundamental, like touching sunlight made solid. Maybe that is because you are an animal, I mused, or maybe because you are dying and have no energy left for judgment or prejudice. But either way, thank you for not turning away, for not making me feel like a curse simply for breathing. The wolf's eyes held mine for a long moment. Then, with deliberate slowness, he shifted his massive head and placed it directly in my lap. The weight was substantial, warm, impossibly comforting. I froze completely, barely daring to breathe. This level of trust from any wolf was extraordinary. From a wounded, dying wolf toward a complete stranger? Impossible. Yet here he lay, vulnerable and trusting in a way that made my chest ache. Something cracked open inside me at that gesture, some wall I had built to contain the pain and grief and overwhelming loneliness. I began to cry in earnest, not the bitter tears of rejection, but something cleaner. Grief, yes, but also release. All the years of being told I was wrong, broken, cursed, fundamentally defective, pouring out in shaking sobs while this strange, impossible wolf simply stayed. My fingers stroked his fur, the rhythmic motion soothing for both of us. "I saved you," I said eventually, when the worst of the tears had passed and my voice had steadied. I probably doomed myself in the process, used the last of my strength when I should have been finding shelter for myself. But I saved you anyway. Maybe that counts for something. Maybe being a defiant, cursed, impossible Omega still has worth if I can do that much. If I can ease suffering even when I cannot ease my own. The wolf's breathing had deepened slightly, his body relaxing despite the pain he must still feel. But those golden eyes remained open, fixed on my face with unwavering intensity that should have been unnerving, but somehow felt right. I woke to silence. The blizzard had stopped. Pale morning light filtered through gaps in the cabin walls, illuminating dust motes that drifted through the air like tiny snowflakes suspended in time. My body ached everywhere, neck stiff from sleeping upright against the wall, muscles sore from carrying the wolf's massive weight, fingers still slightly numb despite the dying fire's warmth. The wolf. My eyes snapped fully open, panic flooding through me like ice water. He had been dying. Broken leg, massive loss of life force, injuries severe enough that survival through the night seemed impossible. I scrambled upright with a gasp, searching frantically for his silver-gray form. The pile of furs lay empty. No, the word escaped as barely a breath. Had he dragged himself outside during the night, crawled away to meet his end alone in the snow, as dying animals often did? After everything, after saving him, binding his wounds, staying awake for hours to ensure he kept breathing, had I failed anyway? Looking for someone, I spun around so fast I nearly fell, my weak legs tangling beneath me. A man stood in the doorway. Not just any man. He towered there, easily exceeding 2 meters in height, with shoulders broad enough to fill the entire frame. Muscles were evident even beneath the simple dark shirt he wore, the kind of powerful build that spoke of years of intense training and combat. His hair fell to his shoulders in waves of deepest black, and his skin held the bronze tone of someone who spent considerable time outdoors despite the harsh northern winters. But it was his eyes that stopped my heart completely. Gold. Pure molten gold, burning with fierce intelligence and unmistakable recognition, exactly like the wolf's eyes. "You," I backed against the wall, my mind refusing to process what my senses screamed was true. "How? Where did you?" The wolf. He stepped inside, and I noticed immediately what should have been impossible. No limp despite the broken leg, no sign of the deep gashes that had scored his side. He moved with predatory grace that spoke of perfect health, as if the injuries that should have ended him had never existed at all. "You saved my life," he said quietly, and his voice resonated deep enough that I felt it in my chest like a second heartbeat. "Carried me through a blizzard that should have ended you, cleaned my wounds with gentle hands, sat with me through the night while my body healed, listening to every word you spoke." The scent hit me then, delayed by shock, but now overwhelming in its intensity. Pine and smoke and leather, underlaid with something darker and more primal. Power itself, distilled into pheromones so potent they made my knees weak and my breath catch. Alpha. Not just any alpha, but something far more. An alpha king. My omega biology recognized it instantly, even as my mind struggled to accept the reality. Every instinct I possessed screamed contradictory commands: run from the danger, submit to the dominance, fight the compulsion, freeze under the weight of that presence. My wolf, silent and suppressed for so long under Marcus's inadequate bond, suddenly surged awake with interested attention. The wolf, I managed to force out, though my tongue felt thick and clumsy. You were the wolf. But that is, shapeshifters are myths, stories told to cubs. Shapeshifters are quite real. He took another step closer, and the cabin suddenly felt far too small to contain both of us in the electric tension crackling in the air. We simply prefer to keep our existence quiet, limited to noble bloodlines and royal houses, knowledge shared only among those who need to know. My back pressed harder against the rough wood, splinters catching on my cloak. Then you must be, nobility, yes. Another step. The distance between us shrank to mere meters, royalty specifically, but those details can wait. His golden eyes never left mine, and I felt pinned by that gaze like a butterfly to a board. I listened to every word you spoke last night, Alina, every confession, every moment of pain, every tear, every doubt about your worth and your place in this world. Horror washed through me in a cold wave. The things I had said, the weakness I had displayed, the complete breakdown I had allowed myself while thinking I spoke only to a dying animal who would never repeat my secrets. I am sorry, I whispered, shame burning hot in my chest. I did not mean to burden you with... Burden? His laugh was short and sharp, almost bitter. You think your honesty was a burden? You think hearing the truth of your pain inflicted by an alpha too weak and insecure to appreciate what he held, was some kind of unwanted weight? He moved faster than I could track, suddenly standing mere centimeters away. His hand came up and I flinched instinctively, expecting a blow. But instead of striking, his fingers gently, impossibly gently for someone radiating such overwhelming power, brushed my white hair back from my face. The touch sent electricity racing across my skin. Do you know what you are, Alina? He asked softly. My name in his voice sent shivers cascading down my spine. How do you know my name? I never... Your former mate announced your rejection quite publicly yesterday evening. Something dark flickered through his expression. The entire Northern Territory heard Marcus of the Eastern Pack renounce his bond with the white-haired Omega who dared defy him. He made sure every Alpha within 100 kilometers knew you were cast out, unclaimed, unprotected. Shame burned hotter, spreading from my chest up my neck to flood my face with heat. Of course, the rejection had been witnessed by dozens of pack members. By now, every pack, every alpha, every gossip within a day's travel would know the story. The defiant, cursed Omega who could not even keep her mate satisfied, who was so fundamentally broken that even 3 years of trying had not been enough. I am nothing, I said flatly, forcing the words past the lump in my throat. A broken Omega with albinism and an inability to submit properly. You heard everything I confessed last night. You know exactly what I am, wrong in every way that matters. I do know exactly what you are. His thumb traced along my jaw, the touch igniting heat despite my attempts to remain unaffected. You are brave enough to save a dying stranger in a blizzard that nearly claimed your own life. Compassionate enough to weep over the pain of a wounded animal you had never met. Strong enough to refuse a bond that demanded you diminish yourself and deny your own nature. What if everything you have been taught is wrong? His other hand came up to frame my face, both palms cupping my cheeks with surprising tenderness. Those golden eyes burned into mine with an intensity that should have terrified me, but instead felt like being seen, truly seen, for the first time in my life. And you are mine, he said quietly, each word falling like a stone into still water. My true pair, my destined mate, marked by the ancient gods themselves through the rarest of signs they bestow upon their chosen. I tried to shake my head to deny what he was saying, but his hands held me steady. I do not understand. True pairs are legends, fairy tales about destiny and fate told to cubs at bedtime. Most wolves never find anything close to that kind of connection. Most pairs are simply compatible matches, he agreed, his thumbs stroking along my cheekbones in rhythmic circles. Good partnerships based on complementary pheromones and political advantages. Bonds that work adequately but lack deeper resonance. But true pairs, bonds forged by the ancient gods themselves, we are different, exceptionally rare. One perfect match in thousands upon thousands of potential mates, and we are unmistakable to those who know the signs. Heat bloomed where his skin touched mine. Not uncomfortable burning, but a present warmth. Noticeable, like standing near a fire without being consumed by the flames. And underneath that physical heat, something else stirred. A pull. A magnetic attraction that felt both entirely new and somehow ancient, familiar. The moment I caught your scent through the blizzard, even dying and barely conscious, I knew, he continued, his voice dropping to something almost reverent. Every instinct I possessed screamed recognition. My wolf, who should have been too weak to care about anything except survival, demanded I hold on, demanded I survive until morning. Because you are the other half of my soul, Elena, the piece I have been missing, the completion I did not know I lacked until I caught your scent on the wind. My scent? I breathed, barely able to form words. But I am Omega. My scent is nothing special, certainly nothing to attract. Vanilla and honey, he interrupted, his eyes falling half-closed as if savoring a memory. Sweet cream and winter roses, underlaid with something sharper, snow and pine and the metallic tang of your defiant spirit. It wrapped around me like a lifeline when I thought I would slip into darkness, pulled me back from the edge again and again. His forehead dropped to rest against mine, and the contact sent sparks racing through my nervous system. And you wear the proof of our bond on your very skin, the mark the ancient gods placed on you at birth. My albinism, the word came out strangled. That's a curse, a genetic defect. Everyone has always said, everyone has always been catastrophically wrong. His voice turned fierce, almost angry on my behalf. Your albinism is a blessing, the rarest genetic gift the ancient gods bestow upon those they mark for greatness. Do you know how many wolves are born with your condition? 1 in 20,000 births produces a true albino. And among those rare individuals, only 1 in 100 ever develops the gift that accompanies the marking. Gift? My head spun with too much information coming too fast. What gift? I have no powers, no special abilities beyond the standard Omega traits, just wrongness, just the white hair and pale skin that marks me as cursed. You do not know because no one taught you. Anger edged his words now, sharp and hot. Because they feared what you could become if you learned to wield your abilities. Because they saw your marking and knew, somewhere deep in their ignorant cores, that you were meant for something greater than they could control. He leaned closer still, his lips nearly brushing my ear as he spoke. But I felt it last night, Elena. When you touched me. When you cried while cleaning my wounds. Your energy, silver and pure and ancient as the mountains themselves, wrapping around my injuries and accelerating my healing far beyond what should have been possible. He pulled back just enough to meet my eyes again. You thought I survived by chance, by luck, by coincidence? No. It was you. Your gift saved my life. The silver healing power that flows through your veins because you carry the ancient God's blessing in your very blood. This changed my life in 30 days. The words felt impossibly large, too enormous to accept or even fully comprehend. I wanted to reject them, to laugh and call him mad or mistaken. But that warmth where he touched me, that inexplicable pull I felt drawing me toward him, the way my wolf suddenly felt awake and interested for the first time since Marcus had claimed me years ago. Who are you? I asked, though part of me already knew the answer, already understood why his presence felt so overwhelming, why other alphas would bow to his dominance without question. His smile held no humor, only grim acceptance. Revan Ashcroft, Alpha King of the Northern Territories, ruler of the 12 packs in all lands from the western wastes to the eastern sea, and as of approximately 6 hours ago, publicly announced fiancé of the white-haired Omega who saved my life. The world tilted sideways. What? My beta found us at dawn, he said, his voice taking on that hard edge of absolute authority. Tracked my scent to this cabin. Saw you sleeping beside me in your exhausted state, your hands still stained with my life force from binding my wounds. Saw the evidence of your gift, the silver light still faintly glowing around my healed injuries. His hands tightened slightly on my face, not painfully, but firmly, holding me in place for what came next. Before you woke, I sent runners to the capital with my command. Every pack under my rule has been informed by now. The rejection you suffered is voided. Marcus's claim is forfeit. You are under my protection, my announced mate, my future queen. Horror and fury warred for dominance in my chest, both emotions so strong I could barely breathe past them. You had no right. I never agreed to, I never consented to any. I had every right. His alpha presence pressed down suddenly, demanding acknowledgement, forcing submission through sheer weight of dominance. My knees wanted to buckle, my neck wanted to bend. Every omega instinct screamed at me to yield. You are my true pair. The ancient gods chose you for me and me for you. I will not allow anyone, not Marcus, not your former pack, not ambitious rivals, and not even you yourself, to reject or endanger that sacred bond. I shoved at his chest with both hands, though he did not budge even a centimeter. Might as well have been pushing against a mountain. This is not protection, Your Majesty. This is control. This is exactly what Marcus did, making decisions about my life without consulting me, announcing things publicly so I have no choice but to comply. His eyes flashed with something, pain, guilt, but his voice remained firm. The two situations are nothing alike. Marcus used you as decoration and demanded you suppress your true nature. I am claiming you to keep you alive. Claiming me? I practically spat the words. How generous, how noble, taking away my agency for my own good. Yes, his roar filled the small cabin, echoing off the walls. Yes, I took away your choice because the alternative was your loss of life within days. Do you understand nothing about pack politics? About what happens to unclaimed omegas, especially rare, valuable ones? He released my face only to grip my shoulders, holding me firmly. My enemies are numerous and ruthless. The moment word spread of an unclaimed omega with healing abilities and the ancient gods marking, they would have come for you, would have captured you, caged you, used you as leverage against me, or sold you to the highest bidder. Your gifts make you invaluable. Your connection to me makes you a target, and your stubborn defiance would have gotten you ended within a week. So you made the decision for me, I said coldly. Took away my voice, my choice. Announced to the world that I belonged to you before I even woke to consciousness. How is that different from every other alpha who has controlled me? Because I am trying to keep you alive long enough to choose freely. His control cracked, desperation bleeding through. I publicly declared you my future queen. That announcement cannot be retracted now. It is done, spoken, irreversible fact. But it creates a shield of protection that no rival would dare breach. It tells every alpha in the territories that you are mine, and harming you means declaring war on the crown itself. I laughed bitterly. A shield I never asked for. A cage dressed up as protection. Call it whatever you wish. His voice turned flat, hard, unyielding as stone. But that protection remains in place whether you eventually choose to accept our bond or not. I will not apologize for valuing your survival over your approval. We glared at each other, both breathing hard, the air between us crackling with tension and unspoken emotion. His pheromones filled the cabin, overwhelming, demanding, trying to compel submission through biological imperative. But I had spent 3 years resisting Marcus's similar attempts. My defiance was armor forged through years of practice. You are a tyrant, I said quietly. No different from Marcus, just dressed in better clothing and wielding more power. Pain flashed across his features so clearly that I almost regretted the words. But he had earned them, had made choices about my future without consent, exactly like every other alpha who had controlled my life. Perhaps I am, he said, his voice hollow. Perhaps claiming you publicly was the act of a tyrant. But I would make the same choice again, Alina, every single time, because your safety matters more to me than your approval. Your survival matters more than your affection, and I will not apologize for that priority, even if you hate me for it." He stepped back, releasing me entirely. The loss of contact felt strangely cold despite my fury. "I publicly declared you my future queen." His voice was absolute steel, leaving no room for argument. "That announcement is now fact, irreversible, recorded in official documents and witnessed by hundreds. It cannot be unmade, undone, or retracted." The finality in his tone made my rage explode into something volcanic. "This is not protection, Your Majesty," I said, my voice shaking with the force of my anger. "This is control wearing a prettier mask." The journey to the capital took 3 days. Revan had horses waiting, massive war horses bred for endurance and strength, along with a small escort of 10 warriors who maintained respectful distance but watched me with unconcealed curiosity. Their eyes kept drifting to my white hair, barely concealed beneath the hood he had insisted I wear. For protection, he claimed, to prevent recognition and potential attacks from rivals who might already know of his announcement. I rode in silence for most of the journey, fury and confusion warring inside me with equal intensity. Every time the king attempted conversation, I turned away. When he offered food, I accepted it without acknowledgement. When he suggested we stop to rest, I dismounted without responding. He did not demand I speak to him, did not use his alpha authority to compel interaction, simply accepted my anger with patient quiet that somehow made me even more furious. Because how dare he be understanding? How dare he respect my silence when he had stolen my voice in the most fundamental way possible? The landscape changed as we traveled. Dense forests gave way to rolling hills, then to cultivated farmland that stretched for kilometers in every direction. Even in deep winter, signs of prosperity were evident. Well-maintained roads, sturdy homes with smoke rising from chimneys, fields prepared for spring planting. "The northern territories are the wealthiest in the realm," one of the warriors, a young woman named Kira, said as she rode beside me on the second day. "King Revan has spent the past decade rebuilding what his father destroyed through corruption and neglect. Every pack is stronger now, every village more prosperous." I had not asked, but she seemed determined to speak regardless. Before his coronation 10 years ago, packs fought each other constantly over resources. Omegas were treated as property to be traded. Might made right, and the weak suffered. She glanced at me meaningfully. He changed all that, established laws protecting Omegas, created trade agreements between packs, built schools and hospitals, executed his own father's most corrupt advisors when they tried to maintain the old brutal ways. "Why are you telling me this?" I asked quietly, breaking my silence. "Because you look at him like he is a tyrant," Kira said bluntly. "And maybe his claiming you publicly was high-handed. But everything he does, every decision, every action, is calculated to protect his people, to build something better than what came before, even if it costs him personally." I said nothing more, but her words lingered. The capital rose from the mountainside on the 3rd afternoon like a crown of white stone and steel. Massive walls, easily 20 meters high, surrounded the city proper. Towers pierced the clouds, their peaks lost in mist. Gardens somehow remained green, even in winter, through workings I could not begin to understand. And everywhere, people moved through streets and courtyards, thousands upon thousands going about their daily lives, all of whom stopped and stared when we passed through the gates. White hair unbound now, falling to my waist like a waterfall of fresh snow. Pale skin that seemed to glow in the afternoon light. Eyes the color of winter ice, unmistakable and unforgettable. I kept my chin high, despite every instinct screaming to hide, refusing to shrink under their scrutiny. Let them stare. Let them whisper. Let them judge. I had survived worse than curious looks. "The council awaits in the throne room," Revan said quietly as we dismounted before the palace entrance. "They will want to meet you formally, to verify my claims about your gifts and our bond." "And if I refuse to perform like a trained animal?" I met his golden gaze steadily, challenging. "Then they will meet you without verification," he said simply. "But they will meet you, Elena. You are my announced mate. That reality exists whether you cooperate or resist." The throne room stole my breath, despite my determination to remain unimpressed. Marble columns soared toward vaulted ceilings, painted with intricate scenes of ancient battles and legendary hunts. Stained glass windows cast colored light across polished floors. A throne of black obsidian dominated the far end, carved with runes that pulsed with faint silver luminescence, and arranged in a precise semicircle before that throne stood 12 figures. The king's council, clearly. Their combined sense hit me like a physical blow. All alphas, powerful ones whose pheromones spoke of authority and dominance. Their presence pressed down like atmospheric pressure before a storm, testing, measuring, weighing my worth. An older woman with silver, streaking her dark hair, stepped forward first. Her eyes, sharp as broken glass, swept over me from head to toe in obvious assessment. "So this is the Omega who saved your Majesty's life." "High Counselor Mara," Revan said evenly, his hand settling at the small of my back. The touch was light, easily shaken off if I chose, but somehow grounding. "May I present Elena, my true pair and future queen?" Murmurs rippled through the assembled nobles like wind through grass. I caught fragments: albino, cursed, unprecedented, highly improper, questionable. "True pair." Mara's tone dripped skepticism. "How very convenient, Your Majesty, especially given the unusual circumstances of your meeting. Found injured in a blizzard, rescued by an unknown Omega of questionable lineage, and immediately declared your destined mate? Forgive my caution, but this appears remarkably impulsive." Heat flooded my face. Questionable lineage. Of course, my albinism marked me as defective in their aristocratic eyes, possibly mad, certainly unsuitable for a queen. "My lineage is common," I said clearly, drawing every eye like iron to a lodestone. "My parents were farmers in the Eastern Territories. I have no noble blood, no powerful family connections, no political advantages to offer. And yes, I am albino, a genetic condition that apparently offends your refined sensibilities and challenges your narrow definitions of acceptable." Shocked silence descended like a smothering blanket. Mara's eyebrow rose slowly. "You speak very boldly for an Omega addressing the High Council. Have you no respect for proper protocol?" "I speak honestly to people who judge me for circumstances entirely beyond my control." I stepped forward, ignoring Revan's warning pressure at my back. "You want to determine if I am suitable to be queen? Then ask me direct questions instead of dancing around your prejudices with polite insinuations." More silence. Then, unexpectedly, one of the younger counselors, a broad-shouldered alpha with surprisingly kind eyes and laugh lines marking his face, burst out laughing. "By the ancient gods, I like her. At least she has spine, refreshing after years of simpering nobles who agree with everything we say." "Spine is hardly sufficient qualification for," Mara began. "She saved my life," Revan interrupted, his voice cutting through the debate like a blade through silk. "While I lay dying in a blizzard, rejected by circumstance and bleeding out in the snow, this Omega found me, carried me through conditions that would have ended most trained warriors, bound my wounds with strips torn from her own clothing, shared her body heat when she barely had enough to survive herself, and asked for absolutely nothing in return except that I live." He moved to stand beside me rather than behind, his presence a solid wall of heat and unwavering support. "You want to discuss her qualifications? She demonstrates more genuine compassion in one selfless act than most of this council has shown in years of comfortable service. She possesses courage to defy convention when her conscience demands it, and she carries a gift from the ancient gods themselves, a healing ability so powerful it saved the life of your king when all logic said I should perish." I could not believe what I was hearing. His words washed over the assembled nobles like a royal decree. Several straightened unconsciously, responding to the command in his tone. Even Mara looked momentarily taken aback by his vehemence. "Furthermore," Revan continued, his voice dropping to something more dangerous, "she is my true pair." I felt the bond the instant our eyes met, the recognition that comes perhaps once in 10,000 potential matings. Her scent calls to my wolf like a song I have waited my entire life to hear. And the ancient gods marked her with albinism not as punishment, but as blessing, a sign of their favor. Any who question her worthiness question the judgment of the ancient gods themselves. This changed my life in 30 days. The phrase echoed in my mind as I watched the council's reactions shift from outright skepticism to grudging consideration. Not because of anything I had personally demonstrated, but because their king defended me with absolute conviction. If she truly possesses healing abilities as claimed, another counselor spoke, an elderly alpha with ceremonial scars marking his weathered face in intricate patterns, then she should demonstrate them before this council. Let us verify this extraordinary claim with our own eyes. Revan tensed beside me, clearly about to object, but I stepped forward before he could speak. What would you have me heal? The scarred counselor gestured toward a young warrior standing guard near the massive doors. Approach, Torin. The warrior obeyed instantly, and I saw immediately what the counselor intended as a test. The guard's left arm hung at an awkward angle, an old injury poorly set that had healed crooked over time. Not life-threatening, but certainly painful, limiting his range of motion and combat effectiveness. Can you mend what time and poor treatment have set permanently wrong? The counselor challenged, his tone suggesting he expected failure. I had absolutely no idea if I could repair damage that old. The previous night with Revan, I had acted purely on instinct and desperate need, but refusing now would validate every doubt the council harbored about my supposed abilities. I can try, I said simply. The warrior, Torin, extended his damaged arm with obvious uncertainty. I placed both hands carefully on either side of the malformed bone, closed my eyes, and reached for that something I had felt before. That warmth, that pull toward wholeness and healing. For a long, uncomfortable moment, absolutely nothing happened. Then, there. A flicker of silver light behind my closed eyelids, faint but growing stronger. I followed that light instinctively, letting my body guide me, and felt energy flow from some deep reservoir inside my core, down my arms, through my palms, into the warrior's damaged limb. Torin gasped sharply. The room erupted in startled exclamations and curses of disbelief. I opened my eyes to witness silver light, actual visible luminescence, wrapping around the warrior's arm like glowing threads woven by invisible hands. The bone shifted beneath skin and muscle, straightening, realigning itself with audible cracks. Torin's face transformed from stoic endurance to absolute wonder as decades-old damage reversed itself in mere heartbeats. The light faded gradually. I stumbled backward, suddenly exhausted beyond measure. Revan caught me before I could fall, his arms strong and steady, supporting my weight without apparent effort. By the ancient gods, someone whispered with genuine awe. Torin flexed his arm experimentally, rotating it through a full range of motion for what was clearly the first time in years. Tears streamed down his scarred face unchecked. It does not hurt. For the first time since the Northern Campaign 5 years ago, it does not hurt at all. He dropped to one knee immediately, head bowed low. Thank you, my lady. Thank you from the depths of my soul. One by one, every other guard in the massive throne room followed his example, kneeling, not in submission or fear, but in respect, gratitude, recognition of something sacred and precious. The council watched in stunned silence that stretched uncomfortably long. Well, the kind-eyed counselor said eventually, a genuine smile spreading across his face, I believe that settles any questions about her gifts rather definitively. Even Mara looked shaken beneath her carefully maintained composure. I have never witnessed healing work on injuries that old. Only fresh wounds typically respond to such abilities, and even then, imperfectly. Perhaps that is because you have never before encountered someone truly blessed by the ancient gods themselves, Revan said quietly, his arms still supporting my exhausted form. My mate is not common. She is extraordinary in ways you are only beginning to comprehend, and you will treat her with the respect such rarity and power demands. It was not a request, not a suggestion, a command from their king that brooked absolutely no argument. Over the following days and weeks, word spread through the palace and surrounding city faster than wildfire in dry grass. The white-haired Omega who could heal with silver light, who spoke boldly to the High Council without fear or deference, who rode beside the king as an equal rather than trailing behind like decorative property. People began seeking me out everywhere I went, a servant with a persistent cough that had plagued her for months, a warrior with a training injury that refused to heal properly, a child burning with fever that traditional healers could not break. I helped where I could, though each healing left me more depleted. The silver energy came from somewhere deep inside, but that reservoir was not limitless. Each use drained me further. Revan watched over these impromptu healing sessions with protective intensity that bordered on possessive. More than once, he physically stepped between me and someone seeking help when he sensed my exhaustion reaching dangerous levels. "She is not a tool for your convenience," he would say with absolute finality. "She is your future queen. You will treat her with appropriate respect and consideration for her limits." His protection should have annoyed me, should have felt like another form of control, deciding when I had given enough, when I needed rest, when others could approach. But somehow it did not feel constraining, because unlike Marcus, Revan asked my opinion, consulted me on decisions affecting the palace and territory, actually listened when I spoke, even, especially, when my views contradicted his own. "You are doing it again," I said one evening as we walked through the palace gardens. The sun set in brilliant shades of crimson and gold, painting the snow-covered grounds in warm light that made everything look almost magical. "Doing what precisely?" He kept pace beside me, close enough that I felt his warmth, but not so close that I felt crowded or trapped. Treating me like I am made of delicate crystal that will shatter under the slightest pressure, shielding me from the harsher realities of court politics and noble scheming. I stopped walking, turning to face him directly under the bare branches of a winter oak. "I appreciate the consideration, truly, I do. But I'm not fragile decoration that needs constant protection. I survived rejection, a blizzard that should have ended me, and your council's hostile scrutiny. I can handle difficult truths and complicated situations." His golden eyes searched mine with uncomfortable intensity. "You are absolutely right. I am overprotective. It is the alpha in me responding to finding my true pair, the instinct to guard my mate from all possible harm, physical, emotional, political. I do not need guarding from reality," I said softly but firmly. "I need partnership, honesty, the freedom to make my own choices and face the consequences, even if those choices lead to difficulty or danger. Even if your choice is ultimately to reject our bond entirely." The question hung between us, heavy with unspoken implications and fears, because that was the core issue neither of us had directly addressed. He had claimed me publicly, announced our pairing to the entire kingdom, but he had never actually asked if I wanted the bond for myself. "I have not decided about the bond," I admitted, appreciating his directness. "How can I possibly decide when it was forced upon me without any consent? When I still barely know you beyond the wounded wolf I saved and the king who made choices about my future?" Pain flashed clearly across his features before being quickly masked behind royal composure. "That is more than fair, more grace than I have earned, given my actions. He broke off, running one hand through his dark hair in a gesture of pure frustration. "I panicked, Elena. When I woke and realized what you were to me, when I felt that pull of a true pair bond, I knew others would come for you, would try to use you as leverage against me or claim you for themselves. My enemies are numerous and utterly ruthless. The thought of you in their hands, being hurt or caged or worse. So you claimed me first," I said, understanding the logic even while resenting the execution. "Before anyone else could. Staked your public claim so thoroughly that challenging it would mean declaring war." "Yes." His honesty was oddly refreshing. "And I would apologize for taking that choice from you. But we both know I would make the exact same decision again without hesitation. Your safety matters more to me than your approval of my methods." That kind of thinking is precisely how alphas justify every controlling behavior throughout history, I pointed out with some heat. All done for our own good, for our protection, for reasons we apparently cannot understand ourselves. "You are absolutely correct," he met my gaze without flinching. "Which is exactly why I am telling you now, plainly and without deception. I will give you time, space, whatever you genuinely need to decide freely about our bond. But I cannot undo the public announcement. That protection stays firmly in place whether you ultimately choose me or reject me entirely." Before I could formulate a response, sudden commotion erupted from the palace entrance, raised voices sharp with alarm, the distinctive clang of steel being drawn. Revan's head snapped toward the sound, his entire body going rigid with sudden tension. "Stay here," he commanded, already moving toward the disturbance with predatory speed. "Absolutely not." I followed immediately, ignoring his growl of frustration at my defiance. We emerged into the main courtyard to find guards restraining a struggling figure, an alpha male thrashing against their grip, his scent achingly familiar in the absolute worst way possible. Marcus. My former mate stood disheveled and wild-eyed, clearly having traveled hard and fast. 4 guards gripped his arms and shoulders, barely containing his fury. His eyes found mine across the courtyard, and the pure hatred burning in them made me step back involuntarily. "There she is," he snarled with vicious satisfaction, "the traitorous Omega who seduced her way into the king's bed before the rejection bond had even fully broken, who turned her casting out into obscene political advantage through manipulation and lies." Revan moved between us faster than thought itself, his presence suddenly so overwhelming that everyone except me dropped instantly to their knees. Pure alpha dominance radiated from him in visible waves that distorted the air. Even the guards holding Marcus buckled under that crushing weight of authority. "You will speak very, very carefully," Revan said, his voice deadly calm in a way that promised violence. "That is my mate you are addressing so disrespectfully, your future queen, and you are currently trespassing in my palace, uninvited and clearly unwelcome." Marcus laughed, a bitter, broken sound, though he too had fallen to his knees under the weight of Revan's power. "Queen? She is a defective Omega who could not obey the simplest commands, who embarrassed and undermined her mate at every possible turn. I did you an enormous favor by rejecting her, Your Majesty. You simply do not realize it yet. Give it time. You will see her true nature soon enough." My hands trembled violently. The old shame, the old crushing doubt about my worth and purpose, tried desperately to resurface. Marcus's words echoed everything I had believed about myself for so long: broken, defective, fundamentally impossible to love or accept. But then I felt it. A warm, solid presence at my back, Revan's hand finding mine, threading our fingers together with surprising gentleness. His thumb traced soothing circles on my palm, a gesture of comfort and support that steadied my shaking. "On the contrary," Revan said quietly, and the danger in his voice made my breath catch despite not being directed at me. "You did me the single greatest service possible in your pathetic existence. You were far too weak, far too desperately insecure in your own inadequate authority to properly appreciate the treasure you held, so you cast her aside like garbage, and because of your failure, I found her." He pulled me forward gently, keeping me close to his side, protected but not hidden, supported but not diminished. Elena saved my life when I lay dying in that blizzard, showed me more genuine courage and compassion in one night than you have demonstrated in your entire, worthless existence. And you rejected her because she refused to make herself smaller to accommodate your pathetically fragile ego. Revan's hand tightened on mine. "I'm about to show you what true power looks like when someone threatens what is mine. Watch very closely, Marcus. Learn what an actual alpha does to those who disrespect his mate." Revan's alpha presence intensified until the very air seemed to thicken and press down with physical weight. Marcus, still forced to his knees by that overwhelming dominance, began to shake, not from cold, but from the sheer crushing pressure of power directed at him with focused intensity. "You come uninvited to my palace," Revan said softly, each word laced with lethal promise. "Insult my mate before my entire court, and expect what exactly? Sympathy? Understanding? Some misguided sense of brotherhood between alphas?" "I came to warn you," Marcus gasped, fighting desperately against the compulsion forcing his head down toward the ground. "She will defy you too eventually. That is her fundamental nature. She cannot help herself, cannot change what she—" "Enough." The single word cracked through the courtyard like a whip striking stone. Marcus's words cut off mid-sentence, his jaw clenching shut as if physically sealed by invisible force. I had never witnessed anything like it, an alpha command so absolute, so overwhelming, that it controlled another alpha's very speech. "Strip his rank," Revan commanded the guards in a voice that brooked no argument whatsoever. Marcus of the Eastern Pack is hereby demoted to Omega status effective immediately. Let him experience firsthand the discrimination and judgment he so readily inflicted on others. Let him learn through personal suffering what it truly means to be judged for circumstances beyond his control. Absolute horror flooded Marcus's face, his eyes going wide with genuine terror. For an Alpha, demotion to Omega status represented a fate worse than exile or even ending. It meant losing everything: status, respect, authority, the very identity built carefully over an entire lifetime. No, you cannot. The council would never approve such. "I am your king," Revan interrupted with icy finality. "I can do whatever I deem appropriate and just. You rejected your true pair because she refused to diminish herself for your pathetic ego. You called her defective, broken, worthless, and now you dare enter my home and speak those same vicious lies before me in my court?" He gestured sharply toward the guards. "Remove him from my sight. He has 30 days to report to the Omega quarters in the Southern Territories. If he fails to comply with this command, he will be exiled permanently from all lands under my protection." The guards dragged Marcus away, his increasingly desperate protests fading into the distance. The assembled court remained frozen in shocked silence, clearly stunned by the severity of the punishment they had just witnessed. I could not believe what had just happened, could not fully process that Revan had just destroyed an Alpha's entire life and status for me, to defend my honor against insults. Revan turned to me immediately, and the deadly Alpha King disappeared like smoke, replaced instantly by genuine concern. "Are you well? Did his words cause you harm?" "I am processing," I managed, my voice steadier than I felt internally. "You did not have to do that, did not need to defend me so publicly or punish him so harshly just for speaking insults." "Yes, I absolutely did." His hand cupped my face with surprising tenderness. "Every word he spoke was carefully designed to undermine you, to plant seeds of doubt in the court's collective mind about your worthiness, to make nobles question whether you truly deserve your position. I will not allow anyone, not former mates, not ambitious rivals, not even visiting dignitaries from allied territories, to disrespect what is mine." That possessiveness should have bothered me deeply, should have triggered immediate memories of Marcus's controlling behavior and demands for submission. But this felt fundamentally different somehow. Revan defended my honor and agency while respecting my right to speak for myself, protected me without simultaneously diminishing me. "Thank you," I said quietly, meaning it. His thumb traced my cheekbone with infinite gentleness. "Always, without question or hesitation." Over the following weeks, something profound shifted between us. Revan kept his solemn promise, giving me space, never pressuring me toward accepting the bond, never demanding anything beyond basic civility. But he also remained consistently present, attentive to my needs, showing me through careful actions rather than empty words what genuine partnership could mean. He began training me personally each morning in a private courtyard reserved for royal use. Not in combat techniques, though he offered repeatedly to teach defensive skills if I wished to learn, but in understanding and controlling the mysterious silver energy that had manifested so dramatically during my healing demonstration before the council. "Your gift is extraordinarily rare," he explained as we stood in falling snow, our breath creating clouds in the frigid air. "Fewer than 1 in a million wolves possess true healing abilities that extend beyond basic wound closing, and yours goes far beyond even that exceptional baseline." "What do you mean by that?" I asked, genuinely curious despite my lingering anger about his initial claiming. "Watch carefully." He drew a small knife from his belt and made a deliberate shallow cut across his palm without hesitation. Before I could protest the unnecessary injury, he held his bleeding hand out toward me. "Heal it as before, but this time, pay very close attention to what you feel beyond just the healing itself." I placed my hand carefully over his, summoning that now familiar silver light. It came easier with regular practice, flowing from my core through my palms like water through carefully carved channels. But as instructed, I focused intently on the sensation itself rather than just the visible result. There, beneath the healing energy's surface, I felt something else entirely. Threads of connection, gossamer strands extending outward from me, touching not just Revan, but reaching toward every living thing in proximity. The guards stationed at the courtyard entrance, winter birds sheltering in nearby bare trees, even dormant flowers buried deep beneath snow, waiting for spring's warmth. "You feel it now," Revan said with satisfaction, watching my expression shift to wonder. "The web of life itself. That is the true gift the ancient gods bestowed upon you through your marking, not merely healing individual wounds in isolation, but sensing and actively strengthening the fundamental bonds between all living things." My hands trembled when I did this. The implications were staggering beyond anything I had imagined. I could, what exactly? Enhance connections between individuals, make existing bonds stronger and more resilient. Yes, precisely that. He stepped back, allowing his healed hand to drop. Between allies, you could forge unbreakable unity of purpose. In battle, you could link warriors so they move and fight as one cohesive organism, and defensively. He nodded toward a practice dummy positioned across the courtyard. "Try pushing your energy outward, not toward healing this time, but toward protection and shielding." I had absolutely no idea how to accomplish that, but I focused hard on the straw-filled dummy, imagining a shield of silver light surrounding it protectively. At first, predictably, nothing happened despite my concentrated effort. Then, a shimmer in the air. A barrier materialized around the dummy, translucent and barely visible, but definitely present. When Revan threw a training knife with considerable force at the target, the blade bounced harmlessly off the barrier, as if striking solid stone rather than empty air. "By all the ancient gods," I breathed in absolute astonishment. "Your power is not merely restorative," Revan said, and pride filled his voice until it almost glowed. "It is protective, defensive. You can create barriers of pure solidified energy to shield others from harm. Do you understand what this means, what you represent? You are not just a healer who mends wounds after battle. You are a guardian, a living shield for those you choose to protect." The training intensified dramatically after that revelation. Every morning, without fail, we practiced together, summoning protective barriers around various targets, extending those shields to cover multiple individuals simultaneously, maintaining the barriers under deliberate distraction and pressure. The work exhausted me completely, draining my energy reserves to dangerously low levels, but I pushed through regardless, driven by desperate need to understand this gift I had been given without instruction or guidance. This changed my life in 30 days. The phrase resonated deeply as I realized how profoundly rare my abilities truly were. Most healers could mend torn flesh and broken bones with varying degrees of success, but creating tangible protective barriers from nothing but pure energy, strengthening the fundamental bonds between individuals, that was something else entirely, something ancient and powerful and terrifying in its implications. "Why me?" I asked Revan one evening after particularly draining training. We sat together on a stone bench in the courtyard, snow falling gently around us. Why would the ancient gods give such extraordinary power to someone like me? A common Omega with no noble blood, no special breeding, no apparent destiny. "Because genuine power has never been about bloodlines or aristocratic breeding," he said firmly. "The ancient gods choose based on character, on the content of one's spirit, and they clearly saw in you something profoundly worth blessing, courage to remain kind even when the world is needlessly cruel, compassion that extends even to dying strangers, the strength to maintain your integrity when it costs you everything." His words sparked something warm in my chest, not just gratitude for the compliment, but genuine growing affection. I was beginning to understand the man behind the crown, someone who valued honesty over flattery, who listened far more than he commanded, who saw my stubborn defiance not as a character flaw, but as evidence of unshakable integrity. "I am falling for you," I admitted quietly, surprising myself with the confession. "Not because you are king or because of this supposed true pair bond, but because of who you are when no one important is watching, when you think your actions do not matter." His breath caught audibly. Those golden eyes searched mine with desperate, fragile hope. Alina, A horn blast cut through the peaceful evening with urgent alarm, sharp, insistent, warning of immediate danger. Warriors poured into the courtyard from multiple directions, weapons already drawn, faces grim with battle readiness. Revan was on his feet instantly, his entire demeanor shifting from gentle companion to commanding king. "Report immediately." "Raiders from the western wastes, Your Majesty," the captain said breathlessly, clearly having run at full speed to deliver this news. 200 strong at minimum, possibly more, moving aggressively toward the border villages. They will reach the settlements by dawn at their current pace. "Mobilize the entire guard," Revan commanded without hesitation. "I want 3 full battalions ready to march within the hour. Send runners immediately to the border lords. Tell them to fortify defensive positions, but do not engage the enemy until I arrive with reinforcements." The captains saluted crisply and ran to carry out the orders. Organized chaos erupted as warriors scrambled to prepare for immediate departure. Revan turned back to me, clear conflict written across his features. "I have to go stop this threat. These raiders have been terrorizing the western territories for months, growing bolder with each successful attack. If I do not end them decisively now, they will continue until entire villages are destroyed." "Then we go together," I said, the words emerging before I had fully thought through the implications. "Absolutely not." His response was immediate and firm. "You are not trained for actual combat. You have never faced real battle. I will not risk your safety by—" "My abilities could save countless lives," I interrupted with matching firmness, "healing the wounded before they succumb, creating protective barriers to shield soldiers from arrows and blades, strengthening bonds between our warriors so they fight as one unified force instead of individuals. You said yourself, my gifts go far beyond simple healing. Let me use them where they matter most." He wanted to refuse outright. I saw the denial forming clearly on his lips, saw his alpha instincts screaming to protect his mate from all possible danger. But he stopped himself, visibly remembering his promise to respect my choices and agency. "This is not a training exercise with safety measures," he said seriously, his voice dropping low. "This is real battle. Real bloodshed. People will actively attempt to end your life, Alina, and my focus will be dangerously divided between leading the assault and protecting you from harm." "Then teach me to protect myself better." I stood my ground, meeting his gaze without flinching. "You have 3 hours before the march begins. Use that time productively. I am not asking your permission, Revan. I am telling you plainly, I am coming with you to this battle, whether you agree with that decision or not." The defiance that had cost me Marcus now stood firmly between me and Revan, but instead of the anger I expected, I saw something entirely different flash across his expression: pride in my courage, respect for my determination, and underneath everything else, bone-deep fear for my safety. "The time I promised you is gone." His voice was perfectly level, but I heard the tension thrumming underneath like a plucked string. "We march at dawn toward real battle. Your ability to link our warriors through that silver gift you possess, to strengthen their bonds and shield them with your barriers. It represents our only real advantage against vastly superior numbers. Either you choose right now to fully accept our bond, allowing the connection to amplify your power beyond current limits, or I ride into battle without that crucial edge, without the protection your gifts could provide my people." He stepped closer, golden eyes burning into mine with desperate intensity. "This is real choice, Alina. Genuine choice finally in your hands where it belongs. But you must decide quickly, right now, this moment. Too many lives depend on your answer to delay further." The choice hung between us like a suspended blade, sharp, immediate, unavoidable. 3 hours until dawn, 3 hours to decide if I would bind myself permanently to this Alpha King who had defended me fiercely, trained me patiently, respected my boundaries carefully, but who had also claimed me without permission initially, who represented everything I had spent years fleeing from, yet somehow felt nothing like the suffocating cage Marcus had constructed around me. "I need to be alone," I said firmly, "to think clearly without your presence and pheromones influencing my decision." Pain flickered visibly in his golden eyes, but he stepped back immediately without argument. "The Eastern Tower remains empty and private. No one will disturb you there. I will be in the war room finalizing battle strategy. When you have decided, find me there." He turned to leave, then paused at the threshold. "Alina, Whatever you ultimately choose, even if you refuse the bond entirely, I will still value you, still protect you fiercely. The public announcement stands regardless of your personal decision. You will never be without home or safety again. I swear this on my crown." Then he was gone, leaving me alone with the single most important decision of my entire life. I climbed the winding stairs to the eastern tower as fresh snow began falling, softer and more peaceful than the deadly blizzard that had brought us together. The small circular room at the top held only a simple wooden bench and a tall window overlooking the snow-covered mountains, stretching endlessly toward the horizon. I sat, pulling my knees tightly to my chest, and forced myself to examine everything with brutal honesty. Marcus had demanded absolute obedience without question. Revan requested genuine partnership built on mutual respect. Marcus had punished my defiance as personal betrayal. Revan had praised my strength of character and integrity. Marcus had seen my albinism as exotic decoration to display. Revan called it a sacred blessing from the ancient gods themselves. But both had made fundamental choices about my future without asking first. Both had used their alpha authority to override my explicit will and agency. The methods differed dramatically, but that core disrespect for my autonomy remained troublingly similar. Or did it truly? I replayed Revan's exact words carefully. "Either you choose to fully accept our bond, or I ride into battle without that edge." He had given me genuine choice, even knowing it might cost lives strategically, even knowing it weakened his military position considerably. That was not control disguised as protection. That was trust manifested as vulnerability. Marcus would have commanded me to accept the bond immediately, then punished me severely for any hesitation, would have used his alpha authority to compel obedience regardless of my wishes. Revan offered real choice and waited, truly waited with patient respect for my free decision. The difference mattered enormously. It changed everything fundamental about our dynamic. I thought carefully about the past weeks, how Revan actively consulted me on important court decisions rather than simply informing me afterward, how he physically stopped people from overtaxing my healing abilities when he sensed dangerous exhaustion, how he trained me to control and understand my gifts rather than simply exploiting them for strategic advantage, how he defended my honor publicly while simultaneously respecting my right to speak for myself. He was far from perfect. His initial public claiming still stung painfully, but he had acknowledged that wrongness honestly, had promised time and space genuinely, had kept that difficult promise even when it cost him politically and personally. And beneath all logical analysis, that inexplicable pull remained constant, the warmth spreading through me whenever he touched my skin. The way my wolf, silent and dormant for so long under Marcus's inadequate bond, now stirred with genuine interest and desire whenever Revan came near. The bone-deep sense of rightness that defied all rational explanation. True pair. The ancient gods' deliberate choice. Maybe, just maybe, destiny and free will were not opposing forces. Maybe the ancient gods presented the optimal path forward, but I still retained full agency to walk it willingly or turn away entirely. I stood abruptly, my decision crystallizing with sudden diamond clarity. The war room buzzed with intense activity when I entered. Maps covered every available surface, marked with strategic positions and troop movements. Revan stood at the center of organized chaos, discussing defensive formations with his commanders. He looked up immediately when I appeared, and the entire room fell into expectant silence. "I choose you," I said clearly, projecting my voice so everyone present could hear without doubt. "Not because you are king, not because of ancient prophecy or predetermined destiny, but because you have consistently shown me what genuine partnership means. Because you respected my right to refuse even when it cost you strategically. Because you see my defiance as strength rather than fatal flaw requiring correction." I stepped closer, holding his increasingly hopeful gaze. "I choose this bond freely, consciously, with complete understanding of what I am accepting and what I am rejecting." Joy, pure and unfiltered joy, blazed across his features like sunrise breaking through storm clouds. "Alina." But I have non-negotiable conditions, I interrupted firmly. When this battle ends successfully, we discuss in detail how our partnership will function going forward. I am not decoration or political tool. I am your equal partner, even if I am omega to your alpha. My voice matters fundamentally. My choices carry weight. Understood completely? Completely understood and enthusiastically agreed, he said, his hands coming up to cup my face with infinite gentleness. I would not want our partnership any other way. Then he kissed me. Not the claiming kiss of an alpha asserting dominance and ownership, but something infinitely softer, questioning rather than demanding, offering rather than taking without permission. His lips moved against mine with careful reverence, as if I were something impossibly precious and fragile, despite knowing my strength. I kissed him back with all the fierce passion and defiance that Marcus had tried desperately to suppress over 3 miserable years, strong, demanding, claiming him as thoroughly and completely as he claimed me. The sacred bond ignited between us like a newborn star exploding into existence. Silver and gold light erupted from every point where our bodies touched, spreading outward in waves of pure, crackling energy. I felt the connection snap into place with audible resonance, not a constraining chain, but a bridge, a pathway between souls. His emotions flooded through that new channel, overwhelming relief, fierce protective love, desire tempered by respect, joy so intense it bordered on pain. And through the bond flowing both directions, he felt mine. Determination, hard-won trust, growing affection, acceptance freely given rather than compelled. The light intensified until everyone in the crowded room had to shield their eyes against the brilliance. I felt raw power building exponentially between us, amplifying. His alpha strength merged seamlessly with my healing gift, creating something quantifiably greater than either of us could achieve alone. When we finally broke apart, both breathing hard, silver and gold light still shimmered visibly around us like an aura. The bond pulsed between our hearts, warm and alive and undeniably real. I cried from joy for an entire hour. Well, perhaps not literally a full hour, but the tears would not stop flowing. Happy tears this time, relieved tears, tears for the rejected girl who had been told repeatedly she was fundamentally broken, who now stood freely chosen and spiritually whole. Revan wiped them away with infinite gentleness, his own eyes suspiciously bright with unshed emotion. "We are exponentially stronger together," he whispered against my temple. "Can you feel it flowing through the bond?" I could feel it clearly. The bond hummed with vast potential waiting to be channeled. I reached experimentally for my silver gift and found it answered instantly, amplified dramatically by his constant presence through our connection. The energy that usually left me completely exhausted after sustained healing now felt practically limitless, constantly replenished through our shared bond. "Your warriors," I said as understanding dawned with shocking clarity. "I can link them all together through the bond. Create an interconnected network of protection and enhanced unity that makes them fight as one cohesive organism. With our bond actively strengthening my abilities, we have a genuine chance," he finished, pressing his forehead to mine, "a real opportunity to protect those vulnerable villages and end this raider threat permanently." A commander cleared his throat awkwardly, breaking the intimate moment. "Your Majesty, dawn approaches rapidly. We should prepare for immediate departure." "Issue the order to march," Revan commanded without breaking eye contact with me. "Full battle formation, and ensure a properly armored horse is readied immediately for the Queen." Queen. The title no longer felt like a suffocating cage or political manipulation. It felt like recognition, respect, true partnership finally realized. We armed ourselves quickly, Revan in full battle armor marked with royal insignia, me in reinforced leather that allowed free movement while providing reasonable protection. He insisted I wear a distinctive helm to partially hide my unmistakable white hair. "You will be a priority target otherwise. Every enemy will immediately recognize the albino queen and focus attacks accordingly." The army assembled in the pre-dawn darkness, filling the massive courtyard. 3 full battalions of highly trained warriors, each 100 strong, 300 grim faces, ready weapons gleaming in torchlight, the combined scent of determination mixed with understandable fear and battle readiness. Revan addressed them briefly, his voice carrying clearly across the assembled troops. "We ride to defend our people from those who would harm the innocent, to demonstrate that the Northern Territories do not yield to threats or intimidation. Your queen rides beside me into battle. Her gift will protect you. Her power will strengthen you. Fight with honor, fight with courage, and know with certainty that you do not fight alone." Then he turned to me, extending his hand, not pulling me forward or pushing me back, offering choice and partnership, as always. I took it without any hesitation. Our fingers interlaced perfectly, the bond flaring warm and reassuring between us. "Ready?" he asked quietly. I looked at our joined hands, felt the connection pulsing steadily between our hearts, sensed the vast power I no longer feared, power that could heal and protect rather than harm and destroy. "I am ready." We mounted our horses side by side. The army formed around us protectively, a river of steel and grim determination flowing through the palace gates. The eastern sky lightened gradually with approaching dawn, painting distant snow-covered mountains in shades of soft pink and brilliant gold. He pulled his horse close alongside mine as we cleared the final gates. His golden eyes met mine with mixture of fierce pride and lingering concern. "Your reign begins not in comfortable palace rooms, but on the battlefield itself. Among my enemies and those who would test your worthiness, you will prove what you truly are." A pause. A test of my resolve. "Are you prepared for what comes?" I met his gaze steadily, seeing both Alpha King and Wounded Wolf, defender and genuine partner, the man who had finally given me authentic choice when it mattered most. "I am prepared." If this story found deep resonance in your heart, please share in the comments which specific moment touched you most profoundly. Thank you sincerely for your time and attention.